Hello, welcome to the IUN Community Garden presentation, Beneficial Bugs and Wonderful Weeds. My name is Leslie Kaiser, Garden Coordinator, and I'll be serving as a moderator today. Susan Radovich is our presenter. Susan, a dental hygienist by trade, has been a Master Gardener volunteer since 2005. In this volunteer role, she has served on numerous committees. Currently, Susan is most actively engaged as a public speaker through the Lake County Purdue Extension Speakers Bureau, and as a mentor on landscaping to first-time homeowners through the Lake County Master Gardeners Association, Habitat for Humanity Partnership. Susan, welcome. It's nice to have you.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. I think we're all ready to do some gardening now. Okay, today we're talking about beneficial bugs and wonderful weeds. A lot of us tend to think that bugs are things that we want to eradicate, and same thing with weeds. And I'm hoping to help you understand that there are many of them that we'd actually like to have in our gardens. Here we go. We're trying to talk about the role of insects in your gardens. Beneficial bugs. There may be 1,500 to 2,000 insects in the average garden. Most of these are beneficial to man, and all of them are necessary and useful to nature. One of the ways that they're very useful to us is they aid in the decomposition of organic matter and the formation of your soil. You need to have very good soil in order to have your plants grow the way you wish them to do. So they really are a very beneficial part of this. They also pollinate our flowers and the food crops. They help keep the weeds in check, and they do provide us with beeswax and honey. They serve as food for birds, reptiles, amphibians, and other insects. And of course, they are essential to the food chain. Birds that eat insects include robins, swallows, warblers, meadowlarks, chickadees, wrens, nuthatches, woodpeckers, orioles, and hummingbirds. Beneficial bugs can be helpful, and they can also be harmful. An example of this would be the mosquito adults are eaten by the birds, the bats, and the predatory insects, so they are part of the food chain. The adults and the larvae are eaten by pond fish and aquatic insects. However, they can also carry diseases such as West Nile virus, which we're concerned with. So what is an insect? If we go back to our zoological identities, an insect has 3 body parts. The head contains the eyes, the antenna, and the mouth parts, and the thorax contains the wings. Depending on the insect, there are 1 or 2 sets of wings. The legs, they have 6 legs, and they are jointed. The abdomen contains the digestive and reproductive organs and breathing holes, which are called spiracles. They have an outer skeleton, which we call the exoskeleton, and it is braced and rigid to provide support. Growth can occur only during the molts. The formation of the insect between each molt is called an instar, and most insects have between 3 to 6 instars. There are 2 types of getting rid of their shells, and that is metamorphosis and incomplete metamorphosis. So we're going to talk about incomplete first. There are 3 stages. There's an egg, this is followed by a nymph, and then an adult. If you look down here, this is an example of the dragonfly nymph down in the lower left-hand part of your screen, and then an example of the dragonfly on the upper side of your screen. Metamorphosis that is complete has more stages. We start with the egg, then we go to a larva, then to a pupa, and on to the adult. And you can see the egg down in the lower left-hand screen, going on up to the pupa, which is that shell that's in there, and the larva. And then you have your example of the monarch butterfly. Some beneficial bugs. Let's talk about the pollinators and what their role is. Bees are the very best pollinators. There are 20,000 species of bees worldwide. 4,000 species of bees are native to the US. There are 5 major families of bees in the US. Only 7 species make honey, and these are the honeybees. Honeybees are non-native, they can be managed by man, and they are important pollinators of food crops. This is a map that you would like to study. The honeybees can be transported by beekeepers to pollinate the food crops. If you will see, we don't have as many crops in the central part of the country. If you're going up into, say, Maine and those areas, you see a lot of blueberries, cherries, apples, cranberries. Up in Michigan, up in our areas, we have cranberries, blueberries, apples, plums, and cherry. And if you get to the far west coast, you'll see that they have a lot of produce that needs to be populated and pollinated by the honeybees. If they do not have enough, they do put these hives into trucks and take them out there, and they actually hire people to bring them to them. Migratory beekeepers. There's approximately 1,000 migratory beekeepers, and they move their bees around the country. They collect pollination fees that are paid by the farmers and the orchard owners. The beekeepers may also visit fields with white clover or orange blossom for the valuable honey made from these resources. This photo was taken by Sue Eleuterio. I don't know if any of you know her. She lives over on Ridge Road, just between Munster and Highland, and she raises bees in her backyard. So she has taken a number of these photos that you will see in here, and we've tried to give her credit for them. Worker bees. They begin their adult life as house bees by making the honeycomb for about a week. Then they help change nectar into honey by fanning it with their wings for about 4 days. Then they become a guard for the hive. Then the female workers become field bees or foragers for about 3 weeks. The foragers bring back pollen to feed their young. Most worker bees die after about 6 weeks, but workers that hatch in the late summer usually live through the winter, stay in the hive, and care for the queen. Most queens live about 4 years and may lay more than 1 million eggs. Again, this was another photo that was taken by Sue Eleuterio. Bumblebees. Bombus impatiens, the eastern U.S. bumblebee, is the most common bumblebee used as pollinator of greenhouse tomatoes. The bumblebees also pollinate clover, which is a forage crop for cattle. They can buzz pollinate by shaking their entire bodies to increase release of pollen, including the flowers of tomatoes, peppers, blueberries, and cranberries. They can forage up to a mile from their nests. And there are about 50 species of North American bumblebees. This is an example of a shooting star, and it is a wildflower that is pollinated by the bumblebees. Wasps. There are 17 species of wasps in the US. Wasps are typically carnivores during the larval state. They are also pollinators. During the adult state, wasps switch to nectar or rotting fruit. Wasps evolved first, and the bees are descendants of the wasps. This is a yellow jacket. The wasps eat other insects and spiders, such as caterpillars and aphids, so they are very beneficial in that way. Aphids are those small sap-sucking insects that we often get infested on our plants and we would like to get removed. So the wasps are very beneficial for that. Cicada killer wasps. Females dig burrows. They capture and lay eggs on cicadas. The larva then parasitizes the cicadas. The males patrol the territory but don't sting. Females will sting if handled or if they are stepped on. These emerge in late June or early July and are active for about 60 days. Flies are important pollinators for specific plants. Many flies use nectar as an energy source, and this is a syrphid fly. Syrphid flies have hundreds of species. The larvae feed on aphids, mealybugs, and other small insects. The adults feed on nectar and help pollinate strawberries and other plants. Tachnid flies. There are 1,300 species. Some species introduced from Europe to control non-native pests, including our gypsy moth. The adults feed on nectar. The larvae parasitize garden pests, including squash bugs and Japanese beetles. A negative is they also do happen to parasitize the monarch chrysalis, which of course gives us our monarch butterflies. Butterflies and moths seeking nectar pollinate the flowers. They provide beauty and they're an important part of the food chain. Some butterfly caterpillars feed on so-called weeds. And I use the term weeds in quotation marks because the definition that we have of a weed is any plant that is planted in a place that you do not want it. So what you might consider a weed, your neighbor might consider to be a very beneficial plant. Stinging nettle is host plant for painted lady butterflies, or excuse me, painted lady caterpillars. As adults, they eat only nectar and they are not harmful to plants. The plants that you see right here are what we call coneflowers. The proper name or more specific name for them is echinacea. Butterflies and moths. They float like a butterfly and it pollinates like a bee. It looks very much like that. It's a hummingbird clearwing moth, and they can just hover right in space. Ants. We have approximately 14,000 species worldwide, approximately 1,000 species in North America. Myrmecologists are constantly finding and naming new species. Most garden ants feed on organic matter, but some do prey on other insects. Many feed on honeydew secreted by aphids. When I'm speaking of honeydew, I'm not thinking of the fruit that you normally think of purchasing in the grocery store. Honeydew is a real sticky substance that shows up as a plant secretion, and that's completely different from the fruit that you're thinking of. Ants have a mutualistic relationship with beneficial bugs. For example, the endangered Carner blue butterfly larva is tended by 16 different species of ants. The ants protect the larva from the predators. In return, the larva secretes a sweet substance which is eaten by the ants. And here's an example of a Carner blue butterfly down in the corner and the ants that are up above it. Some ants disperse seeds. The seeds of many spring ephemerals are spread by ants. This is an example of bloodroot. This is what I have growing in my yard. For those of you who are not familiar with ephemerals, those are some of our earliest spring bloomers. They will come up and just be beautiful understory plants, usually in a very shady forested type area. When the season is over for ephemerals, early spring, they will die out and just disappear on their own and then reemerge again the next spring. Nearly 1/3 of all animals, 40% of all insects, are beetles. They have hard wing covers, poor eyesight, but they have a very good sense of smell. They are eaten by many predators, including birds, toads, spiders, and many predatory insects feed on beetle eggs, larvae, and adults. And this is an example of a June beetle. Lady beetles are important predators of plant-eating insects. The larvae and adults eat aphids, mealybugs, and scales. And I have a picture up here of the life cycle. First, we have the mating. Then we go to the eggs. Then we have 5 different larval stages. So you can see where they go through various ones, on into the pupa, and then they have the newly emerged adult. If you remember, we talked about there are 3 to 6 instars, or the larval stages. We have the ground beetles. There are about 2,000 of species of ground beetles in North America. Most of these do not fly. They feed at night on many soft-bodied larvae, including the cutworms, housefly maggots, and some species feed on snails and slugs. This is an example of your common black ground beetle. Ground beetle larvae and adults are predators. The larvae live below the ground and eat soil-dwelling insects. The fiery searcher beetle was imported to help control gypsy moth larvae. The larvae and adults eat all kinds of caterpillars, but mostly eat eastern tent and European gypsy moth caterpillars. They can also be pollinators. Wild ginger, it's a woodland flower, is fertilized by ground beetles. Again, this is another spring ephemeral, and this is taken from my yard. Fireflies are beetles. There are over 1,900 species of firefly. They're found on every continent except Antarctica. There are over 170 species found in North America. Firefly larvae eat slugs, snails, earthworms, and other insect pests. Not much is known about what the adults eat. Mouths are designed to eat insects, but some scientists think the adults actually feed on nectar. And this is an example of your firefly larva. The same process that creates the firefly's light was used in creating glow sticks. It creates light without heat. Chemicals luciferin and luciferase are used in glow sticks. The assassin bug. It kills many garden pests, including the flies, mosquitoes, beetles, and large caterpillars. Assassin bugs lie in wait for insects and then stab their prey with their proboscis, which is the beak, and inject a toxin that the tissues dissolve. They may even eat each other. The females may be the better assassins because they need protein to produce their eggs, so they eat more than the males do. And they will bite humans, and the bite can be very painful, and the bug does carry disease. So let's talk about some more beneficial bugs. The praying mantid. Mantids eat mites and their eggs, aphids, flies, maggots, small caterpillars, leafhoppers, grubs, and other soft-bodied insects. Mature mantids feed on larger caterpillars, earwigs, chinch bugs, sow bugs, beetles, grasshoppers, and other larger insects. Damselflies and dragonflies. In the same order, Odonata. There are about 5,000 species worldwide. When I'm talking about the order, if you go back to your biology days, you remember we put them in classifications. It went kingdom, phylum, class, family, genus, and so forth. So that's the order I'm talking about. The dragonflies hold their wings outright when at rest. The damselflies hold their wings upright over their thorax. So if you see them at rest, that's how you are able to determine the difference between the two. The three stages include the egg, the nymph, and the nymph stage is spent underwater, and then the adult. Predators that eat other harmful insects. Both the damselflies and the dragonflies will eat almost any insect. Damselfly nymphs eat insect nymphs that are harmful to rice crops. They are also good at eating aphids. Damselflies hunt in groups wherever they find large numbers of termites together, when they find an ant colony or near swarms of mayflies and gnats. Damselflies especially love eating flies. Adult dragonflies eat flying insects, particularly midges and mosquitoes. They also will eat butterflies, moths, and smaller dragonflies. They can eat many times their own weight in mosquitoes every day. Skimmer dragonflies. The adults sit on still water waiting for prey to pass by. The adults feed on mosquitoes, midges, flies, and winged ants. The nymphs feed on insects that live in the water. And this is an example of your common skimmer. The darner dragonflies. Darners patrol and catch insects near waterways and fields. They're large. They're up to 3 inches. They're fast, and they range in colors from blue and green to brown with clear wings. They live near lakes, creeks, and rivers, and some varieties can also live in the fields. I was up in Michigan visiting some friends who have a cottage up there a couple years ago, and we were on rafts floating from the lake on out to Lake Michigan through a little body of water. And I looked down and I had 6 of these who had landed on my bathing suit and were quite attracted to the flowers that I had on there. The clubtail dragonfly. Clubtails prey on other insects like mosquitoes and moths. The end of their abdomen looks like a club. They also have widely separated eyes. They can be nearly 2 inches long when adults. They can be black, brown, or green, and have yellow patterned clear wings. They often live near rivers or streams. Lacewings. Adult lacewings eat aphids and other small insect pests. The larvae are sometimes called aphid lions because they eat so many aphids. Also, they eat spider mites, thrips, mealybugs, and leafhoppers. Some gardeners buy the lacewing larvae to control these pests. Okay, let's talk about wonderful weeds. So if you recognize this Shakespeare quote, what's in a name, that which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Milkweed. Milkweed is absolutely essential for monarch caterpillars. That is their principal source of food. So we're trying to encourage people to leave milkweed growing in their yards. There are various kinds of milkweed. We have the world milkweed, which is on your left. We have the swamp milkweed, which is up on the right. And that's the one that you will see most commonly growing lots of places. The large purpley pink flowers show up much later in summer. The early part of the time, you will just have the green leaves. And then the butterfly weed, which is down in the lower right-hand corner, is a beautiful orange and yellow. The monarch caterpillars feed on all types of the milkweed, and many pollinators nectar on the blossoms. And another place that I have seen large stands of milkweed growing in the Munster area would be over at Centennial Park. Joe pieweed. This is a native plant that can grow up to 5 feet tall. It has beautiful pink blossoms and they provide nectar sources for pollinators. And you will see these blooms in like late August, early September, around that time. Weeds essential for butterflies. Thistle provides nectar to many pollinators. The seeds are eaten by the goldfinches. The thistle down used by the goldfinches for nesting material. Non-native thistles can be major pests, and it is the host plant for the painted lady butterfly caterpillars. And this photo of these thistles was taken over around the pond over at Centennial Park in Munster. The host stinging nettles. It is a host plant for many butterflies, stinging nettle, peacock eggs, and the caterpillars. And I'm going to give you a couple minutes so you can look at all the pictures in here. And that is an example of a white peacock after it is hatched out. Stinging nettles are also the host plant for the question mark and for the red admiral butterflies. Queen Anne's lace. It is not native, but it is in the dill and celery family. Black swallowtails use Queen Anne's lace as a host plant. Black swallowtails also use milkweeds, Joe pieweed, clovers, and native thistle as their nectar plants. And this is a male black swallowtail. Clover. It is a host plant for clouded sulfurs, orange sulfur butterflies, and the eastern-tailed blue. It is a good nectar plant for pollinators. Dock. This is a common weed that you'll find along roadsides and disturbed areas. It is a host plant for the copper butterflies. Violets. These are host plants for the variegated fritillary and the great spangled fritillary caterpillars. Many of us will have these coming up in the spring throughout our yard. I know they pop up all over the place in my yard. Lawn plantain. I'm sure a number of you have seen these growing up right along the roadsides. It is a host plant for common buckeye caterpillars. Goldenrod. It does not cause hay fever. I know a lot of people think it does. It does not. It is an example of a plant that can be beneficial to a variety of insects. It furnishes nectar. A wasp might find an insect on flowers. Aphids might crawl on stems and attract flies or beetles to feed on them. This is a late bloomer. You will see it a lot in August and on into early September. We had quite a bit of this growing in the garden that we planted over by Lake Central High School up near the entrance. And it was a big attraction for making a statement because it's a lot of color and a lot of pretty as well. And late in the season when there's not as much blooming. Unfortunately, the garden is no longer there because Lake Central High School expanded so much and we had to remove the garden so that they could put a building there. Beneficial bugs and wonderful weeds. Diversity is the basis of a balanced garden. You want to invite pollinators to your garden. And in order to do that, we're going to have to learn to tolerate a few holes in our plants for the sake of beneficial insects, tolerating a few weeds for the sake of butterflies. Use your pesticides sparingly. If you use pesticides, follow your label directions carefully and dispose of the containers properly. I'm going to leave this slide up a while so you can copy this down. There is a Purdue Extension website for more information about specific pests. What we usually recommend is that you use the least invasive way of doing something first before you go to your pesticides. For an example, if you have a lot of problems with Japanese beetles, and I know when I had a lot of roses around, the Japanese beetles would come and devour them. The easiest way I found to get rid of them was you get a bucket of soapy water, you hold it underneath the leaves, and then you use your hand and you sweep the Japanese beetles off into the soapy water. They cannot escape and they would drown, and then you could get rid of them that way, as opposed to having to use a lot of chemicals. For a while there, I was using the Japanese beetle traps. I found that you will lure more into your yard if you're doing that. It was easier just to sweep them into the soapy water and have them go away that way. Use your herbicides carefully, read and follow the label instructions, and dispose of containers properly. Again, here's more places that you can call. If you are using pesticides, a spray in particular, be exceedingly careful not to do it on a windy day. We have what's called herbicidal drift. When I was taking the Master Gardener class, they told us of a farmer who had a problem where a lot of his crops were killed. And when they started figuring it out, they found that there was somebody who had used herbicides almost 5 miles away. And it had traveled through the air and the wind and landed on his crops and created a problem for him. So definitely do not do it on a windy day. Another way you can do it, if you're not having a lot of large area that you have to cover, assuming you're using mostly on a few plants, take a paintbrush, dip it in, and just gently paint that particular plant or weed that you're trying to get rid of with it. It will go straight down into there and you don't have to worry about it blowing and drifting onto something and killing a nearby plant that you might want to keep. The sources that I used for here were Rodale's Color Handbook of Garden Insects by Anna Carr, Insects and Gardens by Eric Grisel, and a few others. And that's the end of our presentations. And I will try to answer any questions that you might have. If not, I can refer you to some sources where we can find the answers if I don't know.
Jennifer's curious if you know about the locust cicadas and if we're going to have an issue with them this year.
From what I'm reading, probably. We'll hope we don't, but from what I'm reading, probably.
Linda has a question regarding ants. She said that they're invading her house every year, usually the kitchen. Is there any way to get rid of these ants without using a pesticide?
That I'm not completely sure of. I would go in, there's a couple of options. I would go into the Purdue website and see what they suggest. A lot of it depends on what type of ants they are too. And then you could also call some of the exterminators and see what they would suggest. It might be something that they could do that's not using a pesticide per se. I know sometimes you can use ant traps. I don't know what all is in an ant trap that you could do that way. I do know if you're having troubles with cockroaches and things like that, you can sprinkle bay leaves around and that deters them.
Jennifer would like to know if the giant swallowtail butterfly is native to our area. She's noticed one this year in her yard and she was
Really?
curious.
She has one already? Wow. This year she has one?
It looks like Jennifer did clarify that. She said it was last summer that she
last
saw
summer.
the
Okay.
giant swallowtail.
Yes, that makes more sense. Yes, because they will come. That's kind of like the hummingbirds and some of the others. You know, they will migrate and come up and so forth, but they are not native for up here because of the temperature that we have. But I think she could see them up here.
Okay, Betsy would like to know if you have any advice on creeping Charlie. Should you just leave it?
That's the bane of everybody. When I put in the garden over at Lake Central High School, I had creeping Charlie everywhere. And you can try to pull it, you can try to kill it. The problem is it runs by runners underneath. Sometimes pulling it up, you may end up with even more. If it bothers you, I would pull out the part that bothers you, and what doesn't bother you, just let it go. I know that's kind of a vague answer. It's not something you want to know, but they are very invasive.
Barb would like to know what's the best way to start a new garden for a novice. It needs to be simple and less time consuming.
Okay, a lot of it would depend on what size of a garden you want to do. Raised gardens are a really good idea. You don't have to dig into the soil. You don't have to um, turn over the soil. Once you turn over the soil, you're exposing all the seeds in there to light, to air, whatever, which brings up a huge amount of weeds sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. Also, if you have a lot of clay or something in your yard that may not be quite as good for it, it gives you the chance to put in the proper soil so that you're not retaining too much water. Or like where I live, I have very sandy soil with a lot of oak trees, but it's very hard to keep it watered because it drains a lot. When I say a raised bed, that there's several different ways you can do a raised bed. Some people actually like to do a raised garden table. If they're just doing herbs and a few vegetables and things like that, they might do like a raised garden table. But for the most part, you're just going to put some kind of a barrier down, whether you use timber or wattle fencing or whatever you decide to put around. And then you put some layers of newspaper down on top of wherever your grass is and let the stuff die down underneath it. Pile your other soil on top of that and then plant your vegetable, herbs, flowers, whatever in that. That would be an easy way. And then we did that over at the Tri-Town Safety Village. And we built a few beds. And as those became very successful, then we built a few more beds. And that would be a way for a novice to start and then grow onto it.
Barb would like to know if there is a reference that you would recommend that would give the most valuable information about raised gardens.
Yes, there's several things you can do. One of them you could do, you go into the Lake County Master Gardener, not even the Lake County Master Gardener site. If you go into the Master Gardener site, you wouldn't have to use Lake County, for example, but Lake County, the reason I recommend Lake County or Porter County is they're in our region that we're here. For those of you who are new to gardening, we're in what's called Zone 5. When we're talking about zones, it's an area where it's the frost or the coldest that it is. And you want to have plants that are in your zone when you are going to be gardening. For example, we are zone 5. If you go down to lower part of the state, they're in zone 6. So they could use, when you're shopping for plants and you go into your garden center and you want to look at a plant, they are going to show you, for example, many beautiful tropical plants. If you are down in Florida, those will bloom all year, but they are not going to bloom through the winter here or thrive through the winter here. You would have to take them inside. So if you see a plant that says it is hardy through zone 5, you know you can plant it in the ground and it will continue to live through most winters where we live. And when I say most winters, once in a great while, we will get a winter that is unbelievably cold, like sub-zero temperatures for days on end, and it will kill things. We had one of those a number of years back, and people lost boxwoods. They lost all sorts of things that we haven't lost in the past. By the way, if you do lose something like that, sometimes you can rejuvenate it, even if the plant looks like it's gone kaput. The year that we lost all of our boxwoods, I cut mine down to the ground and they actually came back again. So even though the whole top part of the plant was dead, not the entire plant was. But I would go Google into Lake County Master Gardeners and then go into their website. We had a binder. When I got my binder, the binder was this thick. There are so many publications in there that you would want to access. And you can type in whatever it is you're looking for. If you want to look in like, what is the pH of soil? Or what do I need to do a raised garden? Or how do I fight an invasion of a certain kind of pest? It will tell you, reference this particular publication. And you type that in and it'll pull it up and you can read it at your leisure. And you can print it out even. In reference to the Master Gardeners, for those of you who are not familiar with the Master Gardeners, because I have mentioned this several times, we're a group of volunteers who we happen to love gardening. So they have a class and it's called the Master Gardeners, and it is it's all across the nation. It's not just here. It is sponsored by Purdue. It is a 35-hour course. And you can take the course. I'm not quite sure what the fee is now. When I took the course, which was back, I graduated from that in 2005, the course was $200. After you finished the course and you did 35 hours of volunteer work, you were refunded $100. So it actually only cost me $100 to take the class. And they teach you everything you could possibly need to know or how to get started in gardening and things about that. When I took it, it was because I was wanting to put in this garden that I was talking about out at the Lake Central High School. Our son was going to be a freshman out there. And when I approached the main entrance, they were parking motorcycles on a concrete pad, and there was nothing inviting out on that area. There were a few bushes and shrubs, but nothing where you could really sit down. And I thought it would be nice if they had a garden. And so if I went in and said, I want to build these garden benches, which it was going to cost me $1,200 in materials to build these unilock stone benches and plant the garden, they would have laughed me out of there. So I took the Master Gardener course and I went in, and it just so happened Lynn Gandolfi, who was also in my Master Gardener class, was working in the administrative office out there. So we went in together and said, here's what we would like to do. And they gave us $1,200 to put this in. I got a couple of volunteers, and we went out and we built the benches and we put in the all the plants. And then I would go out there and weed and help maintain it and so forth. And it was wonderful because the special ed kids would get dismissed early and they would come out and sit and talk to me. And we talked about plants and we talked about all kinds of different things. So I was able to educate them. I got to know them. It was fun for all of us. We really had a great time. So there are different reasons that people take the Master Gardener class. But anyway, this is what I wanted to do. So I signed up to take the Master Gardener class. I walk in, and the very first day, we had a different educator back then, Stan Sims. And he says, today we're going to talk about the cation exchange rate of soil. And I thought, oh my goodness, what did I get myself into? I wasn't planning to get into it this much, but it's just a basic idea to give you an idea of how soil works. And you need to know the properties of soil if you're going to put in plants and how it works and so forth. And it was not intimidating. We met once a week for, I think it was like 3 hours at a time. Now they're doing it a little differently. I think they're even doing it online because of the COVID. And at the end of the 35 hours, you can give back your education time, your volunteer time. And there are different things that you can do to volunteer. I ended up on the Speakers Bureau quite by a fluke because I happened to be going to Paris to celebrate my 25th wedding anniversary with my husband. And Stan said, well, do me a favor while you're over there, take a lot of pictures and come back and give us a talk on the Speakers Bureau of Gardens of Paris. So that was the very first program that I did. We have a plant sale. We have Habitat for Humanity, where I work with the new homeowners of Habitat for Humanity. They don't know anything about gardening. We go in and work with them, help them establish their first landscape plants around, teach them, help mentor them for a year. And that gives them a chance to learn how not only to be first-time homeowners, but how to take care of their yards. What we found by getting them in their yards, not only does it beautify their house, but then they're outside in the garden, they're getting to meet their neighbors, and it helps to build a good community and a good neighborship. So that's something that's helpful. We work with going into schools. We can help work with community gardens. For example, we go out and help maintain out at, say, like the Lake County Fairgrounds, things like that. There's any number of opportunities. If you want to get involved, it is open to anyone and everyone. They're happy to work with you. We would love to get to do it with you. I have made so many friends by being in the Lake County Master Gardeners. It's just been a great experience for me. They ask us to keep track of our hours of volunteering so that they can get funding for it. And I have volunteered probably about 1,800 hours so far. And it's just been, I've gotten more out of it than I've actually given. It's a very good organization. I would highly recommend you to come join us if you'd like to. Well, I thank all of you for coming and sharing your time with us. Gardening has just been a great source of pleasure for me and for so many others, and I hope that it is for all of you as well.